to Simpler. We are three pastors, husbands, and fathers on a journey to make life simpler by holding Jesus as the core for every belief and practice. This journey has shaped us to be more like Christ, freed us from the shame of failure, and encouraged us to a deeper love of our Lord and God. We invite you to join us in the discussions that have shaped and continue to shape our lives.
Did I hear you say you went over your handlebars?
Yeah, it was stupid.
You okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you seemed fine yesterday.
My shoulder's a little messed up, but it's
yeah.
fine. But it's been a month of consistently doing, it's 5 days a week of some pretty intense cardio, but especially adding the mountain bike in, and it's just 2 days a week right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
makes a difference.
It's
fast.
crazy. So I took Aiden last Saturday where I went over my handlebars. I took him out. It was his first time ever going on the trails.
Really?
When they were little, they rode with me, but they would ride they had this cyclocross track at the state park that's
cool.
It's not really out on the trails. They kind of just cut it in, but it just helps you get acclimated. But this is his first time. He did great. But someone built this custom ramp on one of the trails that it's just like a real steep A. And I never do it because I'm going really fast usually at that part.
Yeah.
But we were going really slow because it was Aiden's first time. And I was like, we're going slow. I'm going to hit this ramp. Well, I didn't think about it, but you have to be going faster because of the steepness of it.
Yeah.
So when I got up to the top,
over it.
when I got up to the top, it high centered my bike. I'm resting on my frame and I can't get balance. And so I finally got myself tipped forward enough to go down, but then my back tire hit as I'm going down, and it made my front tire hit the ground weird, and then I just went over the handlebars. And
so you weren't. Good thing you didn't go over your handlebars at speed, man.
No,
that could have really hurt you.
That might have actually been better.
Really?
Because I can roll. This was
That's true. This one you just kind of
I just got stuck and the bike's coming down on top of me, and it's funny because Aiden comes around the corner and I'm just tangled up in my bike.
And he's like, "What's that move, Dad?
What happened? Are you okay?" But yeah, I'm even thinking so with my shoulder, I probably can't play disc golf this week, or we'll see how it is next couple of days. But so I might just ride my bike every day this week, and that, dude. I don't want to do that because I need to stay in
balanced.
disc golf. Well, I don't want to lose. That's what happened last time is I lost all disc golf because I was just riding my bike.
You were riding a ton.
But, dude, that's the best shape I've been in since soccer.
Yeah.
Was when I was riding my mountain bike pretty much every day.
Yeah.
It's just so. And I don't know. I'm not really concerned about weight gain or weight loss.
Sure.
But I have noticed that, I don't think I'm taking in the right kind of calories.
Gotcha.
Or enough or something. There's something that's deficient.
Well, you've made a big change just in cutting out as much Dr. Pepper as you were drinking. You've done a lot of things that even the kombucha or whatever, for gut health and different things.
I need to start making it again. I haven't done it in a while.
But I'm saying you've done a lot of things to try to for your overall health that you're trying to do.
I'm actually I'm probably getting a little more crunchy than anybody thought I would. In terms of processed food and meats and stuff like that. I'm not trying to cut out all processed food, but have you ever watched a video on how they make seed oils?
No.
Vegetable oil, canola oil?
Mm-mm.
You probably won't ever want it again.
Really?
It's probably kind of like watching a hot dog video. You know what I mean? As we're going to do hot dogs for the fall festival. But it's recognizing how bad that stuff is for you. Is so my thought process now is even for the boys, I want better meats. For them, better protein, because it's not just. I think it's a good move to stop eating fast food and to eat more stuff at home. But then it's
cheaper.
I think cheaper. And the next step is, all right, I'm not going to buy this ultra processed meat.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start. For us, it's probably finding some stuff we like. I need to shoot an Axis soon and see if we like that. I'm also even thinking I saw someone making dog food out of white-tailed deer meat. They took sections of the white-tailed deer they weren't going to eat.
I was going to say, I'm not giving my dog white-tailed deer. That's mine, man.
But there's parts of it. But even there's so many white-tailed deer around here. I was just doing the cost of it, and I was like, all right, we spend about $60 a month on dog food. That's our budget. And it's
you have 3 dogs, right?
It's 2 big bags at Sam's of the cheap dog food. But I'm I started doing the math. I was like, all right, if I shot one white-tailed deer and even had someone process it, I don't know how much food that would be for them, but that might actually save me money.
Yeah,
and they'd be eating better food. So I was like, there's a ton of deer around here.
Yeah, that's right.
You
start just taking them out with your vehicle, throw in the back of your Jeep. Oh, darn.
I hope David didn't see me.
So I asked him about that. I was like, why can't you take deer from the side of the road? And he goes, honestly, it's because people will take them home and cook them and eat them and get really sick because they've been on the side of the road, dude. They've been bloated. And like, he was like, we're just trying to prevent people from being stupid.
Smart.
Quit eating rancid meat you found on the side of the road. Excuse me, buzzards, that's mine.
We're not talking about rancid meat today, Ryan.
Well, we might be. You never know.
What are we talking about, man?
Hey, today we're going to talk about, today is election day. And it has...
Oh, hey.
Waterloo.
What you think it is. Yeah. It was too expensive to stop and get the topos at the convenience store. So I just got some Waterloos.
Nice.
Waterloos.
So today's election day, and I don't know how people in general are feeling about it. I had a friend of mine call me a few weeks ago, and he was like, man, I'm just kind of stressed about like the state of our country and the state of our world. It was, he's thinking about it. He's thinking about his kids and the world that they're going to grow up in, and just, I was like, I get it, man. And so we just kind of talked about that a little bit. And so I want to talk a lot because I do believe that the first century Christians lived in even a more challenging governmental situation than we live in. And so I want to talk about what it looks like to be people who are of the kingdom of heaven. We as believers are of the kingdom of heaven while we live under the rule of Rome. Like, I want to think about it from a biblical perspective.
But Ryan,
we're
not in Rome.
Well, actually, Pierce, you're right. We're not.
To go to Rome.
Good.
I'm so glad your geography lessons are paying off.
That's right.
Rome's cool. Yeah, I enjoy Rome. Yeah. So, and I will tell you, standing in the Colosseum, like you're not standing down in the Colosseum, but you're like up on the sides, but you're inside the structure, and sitting there and thinking about that people used to come here to watch for sport, Christians. I know it wasn't just Christians, but I'm thinking about it from the Christian perspective, watching Christians be fed to the lions or burned at the stake as entertainment. It was a very sobering moment. Yeah. And it's been years since I've been there. It's been 19 years, but like they were renovating kind of the floor of the Colosseum, and the floor was gone, and you could see underneath the floor the little trails and tunnels and passageways like that people would walk underneath the floor of the Colosseum kind of. And you're like, man, that's where they would keep the slaves, and that's where they'd keep the Christians before they'd bring them out. And so it was very sobering and just kind of like, holy crap, And so what do we do? What do we in 2024 do as believers who recognize that this is not our home? We belong to the New Jerusalem. We belong to Mount Zion. We belong to the kingdom of heaven. We are people of a monarchy, if you will, because we're under Christ as King. And so that's the spiritual reality. That's who we actually are. That's the eternal truth of who we are. How do we live in that truth and still put our feet in the soil of today? Because the temptation, I think, is to try to make try to balance it, and I don't think it should be balanced. Nope. I think the kingdom of heaven has to be the thing that weighs in our heart the most.
Well, I think people's struggle is that they think about it from the how-to instead of first having the perspective of who I am.
Yeah.
So I think that's
a great place. That's where we should start this conversation.
I don't actually think the idea of balance is bad in terms of, I think it's a terrible perspective, but I don't think it's a bad idea in terms of practicality. So let me explain that real quick.
Go.
I think if my mindset is I belong to the King of Kings, who has a kingdom that's coming, and that's my home, right? This is not my home. If that's my perspective, then what I'm able to do is interact in this world, not changing my identity,
right?
But with the perspective of who I am. But that allows me then to interact with the world. And this is, I think, what people mean by balance is I'm not of this world, but I'm in the world, right? Sure. So I still have to interact inside the government that I'm part of in the country I live in. So that's what I mean by the idea of balance. I don't agree with that, like the statement of balance, but I think it's what people mean is like, how do I have the identity of someone who belongs to Jesus, but I still have to do these things in life? So I think I would like to change the term. Let's not call it balance.
Yeah, because I think balance implies equal weight.
Agreed. Yeah. I was just trying to give.
I think it's great. Keep going.
So I think the core thing is shifting your perspective and mindset.
Yeah.
I don't actually believe that most people I know personally who feel the tension actually have the mindset. Here's what I mean. I think if you feel tension, That's not your perspective.
So say that in more words, because I think I'm with you.
If my perspective is that I belong to the King of Kings, Jesus, no one can ever take him off a throne, and his kingdom is coming, and I believe that he's coming back, and he will establish his kingdom, new heaven and new earth will crash together. We will be with him forever.
Like a sloppy wet kiss.
Just like a sloppy wet kiss. Which is anyway, so that's my identity. It can't be shaken. It can't be taken away, whether they put me in the Colosseum with lions or I live until I'm old and die comfortably in my bed. Either of those two situations or anything in between, it doesn't change my identity. Right. When that's my identity, I don't actually feel tension over things like elections.
Right.
I might feel some sorrow and sadness if someone stupid like Kamala gets elected, because now I know, and obviously you guys know I don't care about. I'm going to say what I freaking think about politics.
I think you should.
That's for me. That's not balance. That's me saying that doesn't change. I can say whatever the heck I want to say, because my dad immigrated here from a country where he couldn't say what he wanted to say.
Right.
And now I'm here and I live in America and it's the best place in the world. And I'm going to say what I want to say because I can.
Right.
I said it on purpose because I think people think that that's balance. It's not balance.
No.
I'm able to do that because whether she gets elected or not, it doesn't change my identity.
Yeah.
And I might gripe and I might complain, but for me, it's not stress or tension. I'm just I'm expressing my distaste for this. It's in my mind, it's similar to going through a fast food restaurant and being the service sucks.
Yeah.
Just because I know my identity rests in the kingdom of Jesus doesn't mean that I'm not frustrated that service sucks at a fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
That's what I think people mean by balance. And I don't think it should be balance. I think it should be, if your identity rests in Jesus, then it affects how you feel about the current circumstances.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that we can have strongly held opinions. We've talked about it. I don't know if we've actually talked about it on the podcast. We might have, but biblically speaking, the only people in the Bible who were killing their children were either people who were worshiping idols.
Yep.
Well, it was always people who were worshiping idols. It was sometimes the Jews and sometimes the nations that were not Jews, but it was decidedly people who wanted nothing to do with God.
Yeah.
And so my position, I've said this before, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but typically people will say I'm against abortion because of the sanctity of life. And then I go, well, I understand your argument, but what do you do with the flood? What do you do with, people are going to attack that position.
Yeah.
And so my position is, well, look, the only people in the Bible who ever killed their children were people who decidedly wanted nothing to do with God.
Exactly.
And when I see people saying, hey, we want to kill kids all the way through the third trimester, I saw an interview with a lady, and the person interviewing her was like, so to what stage in the third trimester are you talking about? She goes, week 40, if that's what it is. That's what we're fighting for. So that is the way that people who deny God behave. And I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And I will speak against that. But if Rome burns everything I love to the ground, it does not change my position in my heart, because I'm still a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. Right. They can come and they can burn everything I love and everything I hold dear to the ground, and it has no bearing on my eternity.
Yep. And I think that perspective of your identity in Christ, I think is what should allow us to have those kind of opinions, and it not shake us. So
when it doesn't go our way, or when it doesn't,
either way, because I think the problem with of things like the ideas like Christian nationalism is that you're equating your citizenship as an American or whatever country you live in as equal with Jesus.
Yeah.
And I got to say, what's worse than pisses me off? I heard pastors in San Angelo recently through someone very, 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 very close to me, who told me some other pastors in town were they said this. They were talking about, in their little pastors group that meets on Thursday mornings, they were talking, so I'm calling them out. They were talking about illegal immigration, which I'm not a fan of. My dad immigrated legally. I'm not okay with people just coming in willy-nilly and getting the same rights as he did. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm not for it. And so but they were saying one of the guys not for it either was basically saying we shouldn't ever care for these people at all that are coming through, because he said there's a limit to compassion.
What?
And I wanted to be like, dude, that's
like
the
from
biggest
a biblical perspective. How?
Like that's the biggest you know what I would have told that guy? Like, I don't think you actually know Jesus.
Yeah,
you're a pastor.
Because Jesus, when he's looking at the crowds who are not believing him and not listening to him,
who are going to crucify him,
it says he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd.
Right.
These weren't the people who loved him and followed him. These were the people who were against him.
Right.
And he had compassion on them.
Right.
Yep.
This is
which is an interesting point in this conversation.
So here's my thought
Holy
with that.
crap.
Right. So that's why I would say, like, I don't think you know Jesus, because it is my identity in Christ that allows me to, let's talk about the people coming across the border illegally. It's my identity in Christ that allows me to look at these people and say, I don't think this is okay as an American. This is not good for our country. This is not good for those people. It's not good for people in our country.
Yeah.
And at the same time go, there are some of these people that need care and care for them.
Yeah.
It's my identity because my identity is not my political viewpoint.
Absolutely.
Right.
My identity in Christ allows me as an American to have a political viewpoint, but that political viewpoint doesn't shake me. It doesn't shape me, and it doesn't make me stressed, because it's the joy, the freedom. I get to say whatever the heck I want to say as an American, but it doesn't become my identity.
Yeah.
I can say I don't agree with illegal immigration, but at the same time, I can go, there's some of these people I need to care for.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and what's interesting as you're talking here, it got me thinking, because I'm only thinking of the negative side. Let's pretend you got everything in the country to go the way you wanted to, every single thing. And if when everything was going contrary to the way you wanted it to, you felt anxiety, then now that everything's going your way, you feel peace. But the anxiety and the peace, neither one are because of Christ. It's because of the political situation within the country you live in.
Yep.
And I think of guys like Paul and Silas, who would probably just rip us to shreds and be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I had peace in a jail cell. I had peace."
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I had peace a day and a night in the open sea.
Yeah.
Like I had peace when, like, I've learned to be content in all circumstances.
I can do all things through Christ.
Through Christ. And so the flip of the coin is, if you're allowing yourself to be fearful when there's turmoil in the country, the unfortunate thing is you're going to be at rest when there's your kind of democracy in America. You're going to be at rest, and it won't be because of Christ. It'll be because of the country that you're in.
Yep.
And that's just as dangerous.
Yep.
Because now your confidence is in your comfortability of your political position rather than Jesus.
It literally is a flesh versus spirit conversation.
There's a fickleness to it because I keep thinking back to, it's come up a couple of times this week, but Proverbs 24:10, I think, that says, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. And it's a verse that really just like slapped me in the face when I went to India in 98. I was 23 years old. I was there by myself. I got super, super sick, and I went like just thinking, yeah, I'm a stud. I'm a solid Christian. And that trip kicked my butt, and it was so lonely, and I got so sick. And there was a point at which I had double ear infections. I was running 103 fever every day. And they took me to this little tiny Catholic hospital by motorcycle, like an hour away. And the lady had one of those little deals like to shine in your ears, but they've never used them because they didn't ever see ear infections. And so my ears were completely swollen shut. And she put a battery in it and shoved it in my ear.
Ouch.
And I'm grabbing her desk and bawling. I'm just crying. It hurts so much. And she goes, "This pain you?" And I said, yes. And so they're like, "Well, we don't know what to do." They gave me a shot of penicillin. They said, "Come back tomorrow." I went back the next day. They gave me another shot of penicillin. 3 days in a row, I got shots of penicillin. And I'm laying there in the bed back at the place. Like, my bed was a sheet with... One night I went to lay down in it, and a cat had diarrhea all over it. and there's not lights. We didn't have lights, And so like I lay down in this thing, I'm like, well, crap, literally.
Yeah.
and I'm laying there, and I'm thinking, man, I am frail. I am frail because double ear infections and fever and cat crap on my pillow has undone me.
Yeah.
Has undone me.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I am not as strong as I thought I was. I wasn't as grounded in Christ as I thought I was.
I think that there are times that God does that to us to remind us that this is not our strength.
100%. For 2 Corinthians 1, Paul says that when he was in Asia, he despaired of life itself, and that he believed he had received the sentence of death. This was so that, he says, I would no longer rely on myself, but rely on God who raises the dead. So I do think that sometimes God brings us to the end of ourselves so that we will quit relying on ourselves. Yeah, agreed.
And I think that's
a good point.
Those things, I think, have to be in place for us who are actually believers, for then us to interact with people in quote unquote Rome, in the world around us. Because if not, then we're trying to do it on our own. I'm going to have probably more opinions than most people on the state of our country.
Sure.
Like I'm way more emotionally invested, if you will, into, or it's going to sound that way. For me, it's like, I think sometimes when it's coming out of my mouth, people are like, you're really emotional. It's like, no, that's just kind of how I say it.
No, there's a passion about it. You have,
maybe a passion because it's something I actually believe.
Well, and it's something that you spend a lot of mental energy
think about, right? It's for me, it's like, I probably appreciate more than most people what we have here.
Sure.
Because of
your
where
dad.
my dad came from. Right. And it's just something I think, I mean, I grew up in it, so it's the same as everybody else, but I think just knowing like what my dad had to go through to get here. So I'm obviously more vocal, more passionate about things here, but I'll tell you this, like that will never supersede who I am in Christ. So if the option is like in the illegal immigrant situation, tell all these people, I mean, is to, F off because you shouldn't be here, or, hey, can I meet your needs for now and tell you about Jesus? Like I think some Americans forget, like, listen, I am not a fan of
Christian Americans.
Yes. Christian Americans. I'm not a fan of illegal immigration. I don't think these people should be flooding across the border like this. At the same time, my goal is still for these people to know Jesus. Like how does that get superseded by my political viewpoint? That's what's messed up. That's what pisses me off. Is I'm going to have as strong an opinion as anybody on something like illegal immigration, but it doesn't mean that supersedes my perspective that these people need Jesus. Absolutely. And if it does, that definitely is a nut kicking deserve. Like that's
because the gospel can't be put in the periphery, can't be put in the second place position.
Exactly.
No. And then I think on the flip side of that, what some people miss is they're like, I don't want to talk about it at all because I have concern for these people. And that's stupid too.
Right.
Because you're saying I'm not, like you're a Christian who lives in America. You have the ability to speak out against things that you can. And so why not? Right. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying don't shy away from the opportunity because you think somehow it's going to, if you think that you saying something is going to supersede your identity in Jesus, your identity doesn't actually rest in Jesus. Because your identity in Jesus, if it rests there, actually affects how you say things, how you talk. So again, I'm going to be vocal about political things in the US and even the world, but it doesn't change who I am in Christ or how I'm going to go gospel as the filter for everything I do in my life.
The people who want to kill babies at 40 weeks still need Jesus. And we can be absolutely opposed to their position and still desire that they know Christ. And both of those things can live in the same heart. And I think that what we've done is, like you said, we've kind of felt like one has to bow to the other. Now, granted, the gospel, so it does have to bow to the gospel. Everything bows to the gospel. But I think we've felt like I can't be a gospel person if I'm also this person. And one of the things that's really interesting is I think a lot of Christian Americans want to make the politics their fight. And what I mean by that is they're not thinking about it from the standpoint of like, I'm a gospel person, I'm a kingdom person. They're just thinking about, I'm against these people on the other side of the aisle. And that's the only thing they see. And so every conversation they have, every consideration they have is filtered through this, you're on the other side of the aisle than me, I'm against you, you're against me. Rather than, look, we don't agree on anything, but Christ still matters more than all of this.
Right.
Like it has to.
I think here's a good barometer for people. Like, I don't like Joe Biden. Like, very much don't like him. And I think a lot of people who are in my camp, here's my question. Here's a good barometer. When's the last time you prayed for his salvation? Like, are you more concerned about your distaste of him than you are his eternity? Because I can dislike somebody, but understand still at the same time, this is someone who needs Jesus. And that's what you're saying. Like, this isn't us against them.
No,
it's not. It's, I can say, I might not like you.
Yeah.
Right. I might not want to be around you.
Yeah.
I might think you're an idiot, and you are, right? So, but like, it doesn't change the fact that you still need Jesus.
Yeah.
And then if they're a believer and I don't like you and I don't want to be around you, it's a different situation, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about something completely different.
Yeah.
But this is I think a perspective a lot of people, you're right, they struggle with it because in their mind it's like us against them.
Yeah.
Instead of saying like it's got to be about the gospel. I can have opinions, I can vote, which listen, I think you should vote. In the US, we have this.
You have no excuse.
If you read history, you'll go, holy crap, like why would I not take advantage of this? Like the greatest country in the history of the world. Like take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I do think, side note, it's really funny when you have these guys that go on college campuses and interview students and they're like, I hate capitalism. And they're like, aren't you going to college right now? Like paying for it? And they're like, well, no, I'm not paying for it as scholarships. So taxpayers and someone else is paying for it. Like you hate capitalism. You're here at school. Anyways, it's just a really funny, but like, I think that we should have the perspective that our identity rests in Jesus and his kingdom can't ever be shaken. And then that affects how we live amongst quote unquote Rome.
Well, and here's the thing, like we have brothers and sisters in countries around the world that if they were to worship publicly like we did this past Sunday, they'd be arrested, they'd be thrown into jail, they'd be shot, they'd in some cases be beheaded, whatever, right? And so they're not sitting here going, I'm just going to thumb my nose at my Rome. They're saying, look, man, the gospel's first and we're going to meet, but we're also not stupid and we're going to be wise and we're going to protect the people that we're ministering to. And I did 2 different mission trips into closed countries and we had to be careful of what we did and what we said and the kind of attention we brought to the people who were going to stay behind, the people who lived there, because we could, in the week and a half that we were there, put their lives in jeopardy when we left if we were stupid, Yeah. And so the thing about it to me is like, if tomorrow the U.S. government fell to China decides it's going to collect on its debt, and they're like, hey, we're you don't have a president, we're taking over, and they drop a nuke and whatever. Like it's Wolverine, it's the Wolverines, it's Red Dawn.
Oh yeah. That was a great movie. Both of them were great movies.
Dude, I never saw the second one, but I never saw the remake. But the first one, like when the guy that's in their group that had betrayed them, like it's a movie from the 80s, people. So if you don't know it, get over it.
Spoiler.
But there's a guy in their group that had betrayed him, and he had swallowed a tracker so that the bad guys could follow him, and they kill him. If I remember correctly, they're like, dude, you betrayed us, and like you're. Yeah. But anyway, like if that happens tomorrow, and now we're under communist China, my position doesn't actually change. The ability I have to vote or to voice my thoughts, that changes a little bit, but my position in Christ hasn't altered at all.
No.
And so now what I do is I go, okay, this is a new Rome that I'm under. This is a new regime that I'm under.
Great direction here. Just sparked this thought. Believers in Acts who were in governments that said you can't talk about Jesus, continue to talk about Jesus no matter the cost.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Paul or Peter said, you determine to the Sanhedrin, you determine whether it's right in the eyes of God, to obey you or obey him.
Yeah. And he says, we cannot stop speaking about the name.
Yep.
Right. So like that's how they approached it. So that's an example of my identity rests in Jesus, in his kingdom. And I don't freaking care what anybody else says. I'm going to continue to proclaim Jesus. So it's got to be both ways, right? Whether I'm under a regime, a government that says I can't talk about Jesus, or I'm in an environment that I'm free to talk about Jesus. It's got to be both. Now, it is interesting to me that I feel like there's more stories about people that talk about Jesus in the oppressive regimes and the people who
they're
have
bold.
the freedom. Yep,
they're bold.
I think
they know the cost, and their identity is set in eternity.
And I kind of think that this is persecution is a tell for who actually has put faith in Jesus and hasn't. Who actually has a spirit and who doesn't.
I agree.
Because what does Peter do prior to receiving the Spirit? He denies Jesus, right? He's like, but the moment that he receives the Spirit, this timid dude who couldn't even tell a little girl at a campfire that he was actually one of Jesus' followers, now is standing up in front of thousands of people proclaiming that Jesus is God, that he's King. So I think that's another thing that happens with persecution is you see kind of like a culling of who's actually believers and who isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen to this. So this is Acts 21. Paul's on his way to Jerusalem, and he stays with Philip the Ethiopian, and then Agabus, who had predicted the earlier, we see Agabus twice in Acts, I think twice, maybe thrice. He comes from Judea, and he comes and he takes Paul's belt and he ties his own hands and feet with it and said, the Holy Spirit says, in this way, the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem will bind the owner of this belt and hand him over to the Gentiles. When we heard this, we and the people there pleaded with Paul not to go to Jerusalem. And Paul answered, why are you weeping and breaking my heart? I am ready to not only be bound, but also to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. And that is because his perspective isn't subservient to the government. His perspective is subservient to the kingdom of heaven. And so,
even at the cost of his life.
At the cost of his life.
Yeah.
And so, and what's interesting is there were other times that people tried to kill Paul, and he either left or whatever, but there's something different about him in this moment. Because like there are places where he leaves the city. Damascus, after he became a Christian, they tried to kill him and they let him out of a window with a basket. So like he left. In Iconium, was it Iconium or Lystra, wherever they stoned him? I think Iconium, where they stoned him. And then he got up the next day and went back into the city and preached again. So there are places where he goes and he faces death, and there are places where he avoids death. But he's doing it all with the gospel in mind.
Yep.
And so there was something about the wisdom where it's Jesus avoiding death until it was the time for him to die.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay.
You're right. You can't make a rule out of it because there's different examples. But what is consistent is that he had a gospel perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he didn't care about his life.
No.
Obviously.
Yeah.
To live as Christ and to die as gain.
Yeah. He's not trying to preserve his life for the sake of
his life,
his own skin.
Yep.
Yeah. He's like, God has a ministry for me that I got to complete. And then he's like, all right, it's time, you know?
And then, whatever.
Yeah.
So here's the thought. I think a lot of Western Christians struggle with that perspective because we have a lot of stock in the stuff we have. So it's like difficult to think like, well, if somebody took everything I have, how would I continue to do life?
Absolutely.
Right.
Which is why what we said throughout the whole, or what you guys have talked about throughout the whole podcast so far is so crucial, to start with what is my identity?
Yep.
To start with that, and then to allow everything to flow from that understanding. Because I think you're exactly right. I think what will immediately take place is a lot of what we've talked about, like the tensions that people feel of certain stances politically, but then we start to get really deep of like, well, what are some of the obstacles in your day-to-day life? And it's exactly what you said. I think a lot of it's materialism and the stuff that they have around them. And even if it's not actual like tangible things, even just the general lifestyle that we have, like just the ease of day-to-day life, living in America, the way that
is things.
True. Yeah.
You know
My first initial thought was like tangible items, like my house, my car, things. But then
I think that is what you're talking about. Like, I'm not sure you have the like happy-go-lucky life without the things. I think they're one and the same.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. My thought was like freedom to be able to like go get a job, be able to those things. But then you're right. Yeah.
But I think it's all one thing together is what I'm saying.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. I think you're right on the perspective. Like it doesn't have to be like, I have all this stuff. Quick side note. I do think one practical change for Christians, if you want to have an easier time in the West, letting your identity rest in Jesus in this beautiful system of like, we have the freedom to do stuff, is to not be ruled by debt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then you can have the stuff, right? But it's not something that's ruling over you.
Absolutely.
But anyways, that's kind of a side tangent, but I see that, we see that a lot in the years of like doing conversations and counseling with people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the tensions that people feel over their stuff is because they don't actually own their stuff. It's so like they're getting themselves into slavery, into someone else, through debt. But I think that's, all right. Temper this if you guys need to. I feel like that's the antithesis. Like going into a whole lot of debt in consumer goods, right? I'm not talking about investing like real estate, that kind of stuff. I'm talking about like, hey, I need this super expensive car. I saw this meme earlier this year that said, you make $80,000 a year and have a $60,000 Suburban. It's not the system's fault. You're an idiot. Something like that. Like that. You know what I mean? Like if that's your perspective of like, I'm gonna be irresponsible with the stuff I have.
Yeah.
I think that's a similar mindset of not letting your identity rest in Jesus.
It's showing that you're more concerned about the kingdom of this earth.
Yeah. And for some people, sure, that could just be like they just don't know any better. But most of the people I know that are in that position is because they've put themselves in that position. They knew it.
Let's pretend that it's because they don't know any better. It still shows a wrong value system.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know better,
right?
Like your value system is not in the eternal,
right? Because if your identity rests in Jesus,
right,
then that's got to shape even the way that
everything
that you go about the stuff you have. Dude, I don't want to live anywhere else. I don't want a system where they tell me what I can and can't buy.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't want a central bank digital currency where they tell me like you can only buy so much Dr. Pepper with the currency. You're like not interested, right?
Yeah,
I'll be the first guy that's doing like black market stuff.
Well,
I'll be selling Dr. Pepper on the black market, like, right? Like screw your system. So I'm the here's a good point. I literally am the guy.
I like that he's like, here's a good point. Let me tell you.
It's like, what was that podcast where you're like, I'm the guy who would like be the head of the uprising.
Yeah.
Like screw the system. Like I'm not giving, like, don't tell me I can't drink Dr. Pepper with my currency. Like I'd be like the guy doing that, but that's not my idea. Like I might do that.
Yeah.
But that's not because that's who I am. It's because I don't like the system.
Yeah.
You guys remember a few years ago, I was coming back from Rio Doso for our pastor retreat. We stopped at Whataburger in Big Spring and it was like packed.
Yeah.
And we ordered and it was like 20 minutes later and I noticed that nobody had gotten their food in front of us.
Yeah.
And everybody is just standing there waiting. And so I walked up to the counter and I'm like, hey, just checking on our food. And I looked in the back and like literally all the workers were just standing there not doing anything. And I was like, how much longer is it going to be? And they're like, oh, maybe another 15 minutes. And I was like, you know what? Just give me my money back. Here's our receipts. And then all of a sudden the manager pops up and everybody gets, that's me, right? I'm going to be like, screw your system. Like, anyway, but that's not because that's
Hot
my
dog,
identity. It's because that's just who I am. I think people get confused about that. They think if I'm a Christian who has my identity resting in Jesus, I can't interact with the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant in the very beginning. Like when people are thinking balance, that's what they're after.
Right.
Is the answer of how do I do that? I think if your identity rests in Jesus, that's the answer.
Right.
Because then it shapes the perspective for you. So like, let's say the manager at Whataburger had like broken down and started crying.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to like keep being intense with her. Right.
Yeah.
Or him. I don't know who it was, but like, because I want to,
Shim.
yeah, could have been both. It's Big Spring, probably not. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's still shaped by I can say like, hey, I don't like how you're treating me at this fast food restaurant, but still have concern for you as a person for the sake of the gospel. I think that's what people struggle with.
Yeah.
How do we be people of the kingdom who live in Rome? It has to be that your identity, your perspective is here's who I am in Jesus. And then that shapes, I think, how you interact with people.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're like, if you're a position where somebody is telling you you're in the medical field or whatever, and somebody's telling you have to do full-term abortions, as part of, you're like, screw that. Like, I'm not doing that. And that's shaped by the gospel.
Abortions in general?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree, but I'm referencing a specific conversation. I just don't, and I didn't give the backstory.
If someone listened, they would be like, Ryan's okay with abortion unless it's full term.
Sorry, abortions in general. But I'm thinking of a conversation I had recently, and I don't feel like giving all the details. I should have qualified that statement better. Sorry. There's about a paragraph of information that shaped that. Because it was somebody that was telling me that was something that they were recently like told, like, you have to go through this training on how to do this, because it was a new training, and they're like, no, screw that, and so you are vocal about that because it's contrary to who God is, but you're not vocal about that because of its political leaning. You know what I mean? Now,
wait, why?
Hold on. So like, you can be plenty vocal about political things. I'm just saying this is a thing that's actually gospel. Like, does it make sense?
I see what you're saying.
I'm not saying not to be vocal about strictly political things. So, because I see what you're saying. I knew you'd jump on it, but like, there are some things that are not gospel things that are politically charged things.
Economics.
Yeah. That you can have an opinion on and disagree with the masses, right? Or whatever, or the political party in power.
I see what you're saying.
And you can be incredibly vocal about that. And that's fine. But to your point, Micah, you still have to be shaped by the gospel. These people, you can disagree with them vehemently and still desire that they know Christ.
Yeah,
Jesus can be crucified and still say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There can still be that element. Abortion to me is a different element because it's a biblical thing. But what I think is, I think a lot of Christians make it a political approach rather than a biblical approach. And I think it has to first be a biblical stance rather than a political stance. Does that make sense? Because it is a biblical stance. Shape it. What am I saying wrong?
I think we'd have to say, I'm trying to think of another example. That might be the only one I can think of that we would say that. It might be. I had a conversation with someone recently about this. I'm not trying to shape. I was thinking of other examples. I think you're right.
Maybe marriage, abortion, maybe some stuff on marriage.
What someone's going to say,
maybe
no, not in marriage.
Gender.
No, because we could say it's influenced by the scripture. It's not. I don't think it's not something that the Bible speaks against. Does that make sense? And my point to someone recently in a heated conversation about marriage was, you can't say that I take the Bible's rule of marriage and that influences how I think our politics should be, because then you're saying the only people that we should be okay with getting married are people that are believers, a man and woman of faith. You could say it's influenced by what God's intention for marriage.
Sure, absolutely.
You can't say it's a rule versus like saying every example of killing babies in the scriptures was
people
a
who
worship of
to
another idol, right? So
Molech.
I think it is the only example. So question for you guys. I have a concern that people know Jesus. Like, that's the premise of what I'm about to say. The question is, do you feel like it's different for the priests of Molech, the priests of Baal? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know that this is an example. Maybe it is. I love Polycarp's response to Rome, literally, when he's in the Colosseum and the proconsul or whoever it is says, teach the crowds about Jesus. And he says, no. And he says, and he cites basically Romans 13. And he goes, but because you are the leader, if you'll appoint the day, I'll sit down with you and talk to you about Christ anytime. But he's like, I'm not here to try to sway the crowds. Like, the rabble was wanting him murdered and stuff. And so like, I think, is it possible that it's a wisdom issue? That like sometimes the priest, you have the opportunity to share Christ, and then sometimes the crowd, you share Christ, and then sometimes you don't.
I'm just trying to think of biblical examples.
So I
can tell you where I'm going in a second with the question.
So Simeon, right? Was it Simeon in Acts 8 that had been doing witchcraft, and then when he sees that the Holy Spirit is laid on people by hands, it's not Simeon, is it?
Simon.
Is it Simon?
The magician.
Simon the magician, thank you, yeah. And he says, give me that, and he wants to buy it. And Peter curses him and says, you need to pray that God will allow you to repent. And he said, but it has earlier said that he believed the message, but then like he really clearly didn't because of what Peter says next to him, right? And so he's like, ooh, I want this power too. I want, but he had been, what the Bible says is that he had been the one that everybody had kind of come to, and now he's still wanting to operate in that power. Eusebius, who's the only church historian for the first 300 years, writes about, what did we just say? Simon. Yeah. Writes about Simon and says that he started basically a cult after that where there was a worship of him. And so like Peter is pretty dismissive of him.
Yeah.
Peter's just like, no, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time. And Jesus talking about don't cast your pearls before swines.
Yeah.
Don't give what is holy to the dogs.
I think that's where my leaning is. I don't think a concern for people to know Jesus means I have to treat them softly.
Agreed.
I think that the power of the gospel rests in the message of the gospel, and it's the job of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Right. So I think what I don't like is this like weak perspective of American Christians who are like, I got to approach everybody softly so that they can know Jesus. I don't think that's a biblical model of the gospel.
Yeah.
Sometimes the message of the gospel is heavy-handed.
Yeah.
And that's so, because that's what I was thinking is like, remember that video I sent you guys a few years ago of the lady with like the baby doll outside when they were doing
beating it on the ground?
Yeah, it was right when they were trying to overturn Roe versus Wade, and she was like beating it, saying kill the babies. I don't feel like this is me, so maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like I would approach her with a soft hand. I think I would approach her with the gospel, but it would be heavy-handed because this is someone this is obviously demonic.
I was going to say, like, this is way out of my depth, because if I was in that position, I would say this is a woman who's demon-possessed, and I have never cast a demon out. Not that God couldn't use me to do that in that moment, but it's the dude in the cemetery breaking the chains that Jesus cast all the demons into the pigs. Jesus doesn't have any impact on the guy until the demonic force is gone. So like, I think that there has to be a wisdom, right?
That's a good point.
So like if it's demonic, I think that's a whole different category even.
So where I was going with that is behind every idol is a demon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What were we, like the killing of babies?
Yeah.
Where does that stem from in the scripture?
Moloch.
So this is where I'm landing, right?
Yeah.
So just because someone has a cool, calm demeanor when they talk about how they want to kill babies, why do I think that's different than the lady who's beating the doll outside the courthouse saying kill the babies? That's my point.
Yeah. I think that they're enemies of the kingdom, but I think that they have to be approached as enemies of the kingdom rather than political enemies.
Yes.
Yeah.
To your point earlier, people are more offended by them because of the political difference rather than the fact that this is someone who is...
As Christians, a lot of Christians are having more conversations about whether they're a red or a blue state.
Yeah.
And I think the conversations as believers has to start from the perspective of what does the kingdom of heaven look like?
Yeah.
Also with the understanding, and this isn't me just saying we'll throw in the towel and give up, but also with the understanding that the world itself is going to proceed in decay.
Yeah.
Prior to the return of Christ. It's going to get worse. So my goal cannot be ultimately to make the world a world of peace. That can't ultimately be my goal.
It's stupid because it won't happen until Jesus comes back.
Because that's the return of Christ. And so what I'm praying for is the return of Jesus. And what I'm doing in the meantime is trying to shape people's perspective towards Christ. And in America, we have an opportunity in our political system to cast a vote that I am not one of these guys that's like, I want to pick the most Christian candidate. That's not how I approach it.
Nope.
I approach it from the standpoint of, there's a couple of deciding factors for me, but one of them is like the political entity that is the political government of the United States, the government of the US, is not a Christian entity. We can debate about whether or not it actually started that way, but today it's not.
Right.
It is not that today. So how it started is irrelevant for the conversation of today's election, right? And so the goal isn't for me to make America's politics Christian.
Nope.
The goal this is me personally, the goal that I have is I have enjoyed, like you've already said, Micah, a lot of freedoms in this country. I have a lot of opportunities in this country. I am seeking to preserve them for my kids as best I can.
Yeah.
I am against people who do things that are decidedly contrary to Jesus. And if one of the two political candidates is decidedly against the things that are in Christ, I cannot cast my weight behind that person. And so like I don't know. It's such a weird thing because... Can
you flesh that out a little bit?
I don't know that I can well, so shape it for me, correct me. But like,
I don't think you could make that a rule.
Okay. But
I think you could say, I'm going to have a leaning.
Yeah, definitely have a leaning.
But you couldn't make it a rule because you might not ever get the vote.
Yeah, you would probably never vote. You're right. Because...
if you dug into every single one of the candidates, there's going to be something
they're
that
not
they say
godly.
that... Yeah.
So for me, like the preservation of...
What you mean is there's some key issues.
There are.
And maybe most specifically abortion. And you know what? Someone can say the whole like, what is it? One issue voter.
Oh yeah.
You know, I have like, someone come have that conversation with me.
Yeah.
That's a believer. Please, not the non-believer. It's not going to go here. Believer, come, let's have that conversation. I'd love to have that conversation with you because tell me how it's not that big of a deal. Every example in the scripture of killing babies is the worship of another god.
If I had to choose between higher taxes or abortion, like give me the higher taxes and let's be done with abortion.
Yeah, I've said forever, I could disagree with someone on every other thing.
Every other thing.
And here's what you see though. because we know where that comes from.
Yeah.
Those two aren't usually combined because, and I'll tell you why, to your point a second ago about the world consistently going towards chaos, what we see in the scripture is that is a global thing, right?
Yes.
It is what we call now globalism. That's the push towards what will be the thing that the Antichrist, the abomination that causes desolation oversees, right? So it's moving that direction. So any push towards globalism, you know where that's headed, right?
Yeah.
So this is the reality, I think, for now, is that those issues aren't ever going to be disconnected.
No.
Someone that's a globalist is most likely going to be someone who is also someone who wants to kill babies.
Yeah, well,
not across the board, but I feel like that tends to be the case.
And we're at the place in our culture where it's, I mean, we've been moving this way for a long time, but that truth is subjective. And so now there's no, from the world's perspective, there's no gender reality. There's no, you know, like.
That's what's interesting is I don't think it's the world's perspective.
Do you not?
No, it's a few influential, like go to any country that, go to India, go to China, go to Africa, most places in Africa.
They're not having these debates.
Southeast Asia. Okay, Southeast Asia might be a different one because they have what do they call those, like the sex boys that like all, you know what I'm talking about, like what's the really bad place?
There's a lot.
Anyways,
anyway,
so like Southeast Asia might be a bad example, but I think it's just the people that have an interest.
Power.
This is the media influence, right? I don't think it's actually the perspective of the world yet. I think it's trying to get there. Like the push is, we know where this is going, right?
Yeah.
The enemy's pushing towards the end, and what ultimately that brings is the return of Jesus. So it's funny because there's part of me that's like, practically, I hate the idea of the world moving that direction as far as how it affects me now.
100%.
On the flip side of that, I'm like, man,
super excited.
Come back quicker. Like, there's part of me that's like, hey, what can we vote for? I'm not going to do that.
But we live in a very broken system, and I think unfortunately a lot of Christians have the perspective of, I want to fix the system.
Yes,
and that's the wrong perspective.
Yep.
Yeah,
you are in a system in the U.S. that allows you to have some say in it, so have your say.
Yeah, but
your goal isn't that America, to your point earlier, Ryan, that America isn't like this great peaceful place. Your goal is that people know Jesus.
Yeah.
But in the midst of that, you have the ability to vote, so vote. And have your opinion and say your opinion.
Yeah.
And if that's taken away from you and they say, stop talking about Jesus or we'll throw you to the lions, then let's all have a party going to the lions.
Yeah.
I'll lead the charge. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you think back to, and I don't think we really teach Matthew 13 probably super well as church people, but Matthew 13, the third soil is the soil where the seed falls among the thorns, and the thorns grow up and choke it out. And it says, second soil falls on the rocky soil, and the sun comes up and it scorches the seed. And it says, this is persecution, right? This is, there's not a deep root. And then persecution comes and the plant withers. It has nothing. And so it bears no fruit. It's not really a believer. But I think that there, like you said it a moment ago, like persecution has a way of sifting the wheat from the chaff. And we who are kingdom minded cannot be swayed from that.
No.
But if you're politically minded, every political change will require a pivot in your perspective.
Yep.
And
you mean as the basis?
If it's the basis
of your
of
identity is.
If it's the basis of how you're operating, you know, if your whole goal is a better political climate, and that's the foundation for how you think and what you process,
right?
Then when the new political climate shifts, you'll have to shift your perspective.
Right.
But if the basis for everything is Christ, then what we do is we go, okay, how in this circumstance do I best represent Christ?
That's a fantastic question. I think you can ask, if your identity rests in Jesus, you can ask that in every situation.
Yeah.
How do I best represent Jesus in this situation?
Yeah. And
because I think it changes for individuals too.
Yeah, sure.
Like based on, we joke all the time about Ezra and Nehemiah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They approach the people differently, but with the same goal.
Well, and I have a friend who's a doctor, and just the practicality of the things they're going to come in contact with every day are way different than the practicality of the things I'm going to come in to contact with every day. So they're going to find themselves being way more vocal with their colleagues about certain issues.
It matters for their day-to-day, right?
Yeah, because it's their world. You know what I mean? And not that I'm silent about those things, but I'm just not going to have the opportunity that they will have to have those same kinds of discussions because it's going to be their daily life.
You guys are way less vocal about political stuff than I am.
Yeah.
And which is totally fine, right? That's just personalities.
Yeah.
And I think that's an example, right?
Yeah.
We all have the same kingdom mindset, all three of us.
Yeah.
And we approach those things differently. And it's not because one's right and one's wrong.
Yeah.
It's just different. Like it's just different personalities.
Well, and I would argue that the majority of the things that bother you bother me. And I only put that caveat that the majority is because you listen to and watch a lot more stuff than I do. And so there are things that I probably haven't thought about that you've thought about.
Yeah.
But I think on all of the major issues, we feel the same.
100%.
But I'm still shaped by the kingdom. You're still shaped by the kingdom. You just are more vocal.
But I'm also that way in non-political things.
But flip it. I am more angry at charlatan pastors than you are. And
really?
Well, in the sense that like you have said to me on multiple times, you're like, dude, that's how they are. That's how they behave. What did you expect? Like I get offended and you're not offended. You're like,
no. I think it's actually the same as your political thought. I think we have the same offense.
Yeah. But my reaction is different than your reaction.
It's not a different offense.
I agree. So sorry, I should have said that better. But I'm more like vocally agitated. I want to like punch.
I'm dismissive.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, well, screw him, kick him to the curb.
Freaking idiots.
And I want to go like rip out toenails and
your example is the reaction to it looks different with the same passion.
Yeah.
I think that's how we approach it. I think that too many times Christians think it's like here's a rule for how you act, and I don't think that's always the case.
No,
you know what I mean?
I mean, look, personality also shouldn't be your foundation.
No,
but we do have different personalities. We have different backgrounds. We have different things that we're passionate about, and that will shape how we approach things.
I feel like Stephen was a lot more calm when he was getting stoned,
dude,
than
I would be. I'd be like, well, hold on a second here, guys. I'd be like, you missed me with that one, Bill.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like I don't know how if people were about to throw rocks at me like that, I'm not sure I would be screaming. I think I might be dismissive.
Pick them up and throw them back.
Well, I would probably do. They're gonna take me out fighting, right? Let's just say I was tied up and they're yelling stuff at me. Like, I'm really, really mad at you when I don't say anything.
Yeah.
So I think there are some
these freaking idiots. Fine,
yeah.
Tie me up and send me to Jesus. It'll be all right.
So, but I think it's just personality. But what has to be shaping for us is our identity in Jesus, and then it affects. Because I'm more vocal about like political stuff, I think people probably misconstrue that sometimes as
you're politically driven.
Yes, but that's not the case.
No.
Like I have an acquaintance, who's a pastor in Sonora, and he takes groups down periodically to the border to like meet the needs of the people coming across. I'm not sure, but we might have different viewpoints on whether illegal immigration is okay or not. But I would go down to the border with him and meet the needs of the people.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's how it shapes, right?
Yeah, right.
Someone who's, to your point, is politically driven is going to be like, I don't want to have anything to do with that guy.
Right. Because their political stance.
Right. Versus going, listen, I disagree with this guy, but he's meeting the needs of people. He's doing gospel work. Let's go. I'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that I have really, in the last couple of years, really enjoyed fellowship with that we probably disagree on a couple of different biblical things. But every time I've been around them, I've been blessed by them and encouraged by them. And so I'm not allowing the things that are different. We believe the same thing about Jesus.
Yeah.
We believe the same thing about salvation. So like we believe the same thing about the kingdom of heaven and the return of Christ. And so like, I'm not going to let those kinds of things cause division. And this is in the body, like over, I don't know, like I've been blessed and encouraged by them. I had lunch with a couple of guys last week, and we just sat and talked for 2 hours, and it was like good, and it was refreshing. And I texted him later that night. I was like, man, like we got to do this more than every 4 months, because like it's good.
Yeah.
It's so stinking refreshing.
Yeah.
And we're just able to share our love for Jesus and our love for making Jesus known, you know? And so, but if this is the people, I know this is not the topic, but just to kind of button it all up, this is the people who are more concerned with being Baptist than they are with being kingdom minded.
Yeah.
And now they're divided against everybody who's not the same kind of Baptist that they are. And it's like, dude, like we cannot let anything but Christ be foundation. Or you might even say it this way, Pierce, keep Christ as core.
What?
I know, like that I
gotta write that down, man.
Yeah. I just felt like that was something you probably needed.
You were going to say that at some point too. I wonder how many Christians are actually divided over politics.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't like that person. And maybe sometimes it's fair, right?
Yeah,
Like maybe there's certain situations, but I'm thinking like people, well, and this is modern day, people are so sensitive about political conversations.
Dude, yeah.
It's like, oh, you don't agree with me?
Everything.
That's true. But like, why can't two Christians have like an actual conversation, maybe even like a intense conversation about something like politics, and it not be divisive?
Yeah.
Because I don't think a Jesus identity perspective doesn't mean I have to agree with everything someone else believes for us to be united.
Well, I think an example is like parenting. Like people have very strong opinions about parenting, are very apt to say or quick to say, I disagree with the way so-and-so is parenting. But if their aim is to raise their kids up to know Jesus, my aim is to raise up my kids to know Jesus, then who the hell cares? Like,
you're talking about the practical then at that point.
The practical,
One and all those misunderstandings of like
not abortion, not those kinds of things.
Yeah. I think it all stems back to your first point, man. It's misunderstanding of identity. Like if we truly believe and understand who we are in Christ, and let's say that the two believers you were talking about a second ago who can't have a conversation, let's say 100% we know they're believers, there's still something misunderstanding of their identity because they don't know their own brotherhood at that moment. They don't know their own unity. So there's a misunderstanding somewhere, and we have to go back to that point before we can like address, like we're not going to fight for peace in the discussion more than we would fight for our understanding of identity, right? And so we have to go back to the identity to therefore have peace in the conversation. And same thing with how we approach so much of the world. I think that one of the biggest things is for too long, so many people have allowed worldly definitions of love, grace, compassion to then say, okay, well, I have to fit into their mold of love because Jesus is love. And so what they're trying to do is take Jesus into their definition of love instead of saying, I need to define all these things based by Christ and ultimately by Christ, and within that my own identity, and now my actions flow from Jesus, not based off the way the world says it. So I think that goes to a lot of how we've said, like, love by worldly definition is tolerance and acceptance and softness, versus we don't see that in the scripture. There's a lot of times where love is very in your face and intense. And so I think that we've got to continually come back to that place of, well, continue is probably the wrong way to say it. We've got to stand firm on the foundation that Christ has laid of who we are.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah, because again, it's you will be able to stand firm if your identity rests in Jesus,
and you're able to approach all those situations exactly like you said earlier, Micah. Of okay, in this situation now where I am in life, where we are culturally, socially, how can I best represent Christ in this?
There's a couple passages that make me think of that. It's one's Galatians 5. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Speaking of going back to the law. Another one is, and I forget where this one is. It's one of Paul's letters, but he says standing firm together. And it's
I just read that.
It's
he's reminding them to do that.
I think that's one of the things I think we forget as Christians is like we have a together that like nothing else compares to.
It's in a short list of things that he's reminding them to do.
Anyways, but it's
Colossians or Philippians.
I bet it is early in Colossians. Anyways, Pierce, that's what made me think about that, because you're right. It's not a continue thing. It's a stand firm in the reality of who you are now.
Exactly.
And the beauty for us as believers is we get to stand firm together.
Yeah, exactly.
Together. And that's where I think we miss it. Like we're so divided over, to your point, Ryan, about things that shouldn't divide us instead of standing firm together.
Absolutely.
one of the things that I think we have to bring into this conversation, I know our time's wrapping up, but no one comes to authority unless given authority by God.
Mm-hmm.
No one. And so Nebuchadnezzar came to authority for that purpose. The Pharaoh in Moses' day came to authority for that purpose. And so like Darius and Cyrus came to authority for that purpose. And so sometimes things are going crazy because it's moving us towards Christ, like you said, Micah. And so John 19, John 19:7, the Jewish leaders said to Pilate, "We have a law, and according to the law, he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid and went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus, but Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Do you not realize I have the power to either free you or to crucify you?" Jesus said, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above." Right? So Pilate's power over Jesus came from God. Like this was God. The Bible tells us in Luke 22 that God handed Christ over into the hands of wicked men for that hour and power of darkness so that the cross could be done, right? And I know that we're not waiting for another cross to happen like this happened, but like the Antichrist has to come to power.
Yeah.
But before the Antichrist has to come to power, Babylon has to come to power. And the world has to be so crushed under the weight of Babylon that when the Antichrist kills the queen of Babylon, the whole world goes after the Antichrist in love and affection. And like these things do have to take place.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we just sit on our hands.
Yep.
But it also means we're not surprised when the world continues to step away from God because we understand the kingdom.
That's a good point. It's an understanding of the direction the world is going and will go that can't shake us because we understand who we are.
Right.
Because if our identity rests in the circumstances of the world, we're going to be shaken as the world continues to move towards the end.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to get better.
No.
And to your point, we're not going to sit on our hands and just do nothing.
No, absolutely not.
Well, and even if that's the case as well, like just to add on to it, if you are allowing your identity and your who you are to be defined by the circumstances of the world, and as the world progresses into more and more decay, you're just to a point blindly accepting all those things. Like, well, this is where my foundation is. I have to keep accepting all these things as I keep going along, and just kind of going with the flow. I saw a meme that was kind of making fun of just kind of the arc of everything going on with the LGBTQ community for the past 25 years or so. And he was like fake crying. And he was like, you wanted to get married. Okay. You wanted to do this, but now you want to be puppies and you want to be the opposite sex. And you wanted to, where does the line stop? But like on a serious note, like,
where does the line stop?
Where does the line stop? Like if my foundation's built upon the world and its tolerances and its acceptance and its stances, then I have to keep just blindly accepting these things the further away they go from God. And so, but Christ will never be that inconsistent at all.
Yeah, that's different than understanding that it's going to go that way. That doesn't mean I just roll over and take it.
Absolutely.
Right. My gospel mindset is I'm still going to tell those people like, hey, you cannot find true identity by switching your sex, by becoming a puppy, quote unquote.
Right.
I mean, like that will never, like, that's the conversation. Dude, there's this guy I will see pop up on Instagram every once in a while. I love how we talk about social media as if we're on it all the time. It's like minutes a day, right? So it just happens. But assumingly a believer, it's a younger guy, and he's basically doing like street evangelism. And I know you're just seeing clips, right? But he'll be in these awkward environments with like a LGBTQ, or he was at like a Satanist convention one time.
Wow.
And he walks up and he talks to these people, and it's him, right? It's his personality. And he'll like look intensely at him, and he'll put his arm on him and be like, hey man, I just want you to know I love you. And that's the conversation. It's like he breaks the walls by that. And then he talks about Jesus, and it's he's not swayed, right? He's not saying I'm okay with this.
Right. Yeah.
But his mindset is I'm gonna tell you about Jesus because I want you to know that you could actually have love and fulfillment and joy and peace here and not in the things you're so like that's how we have to interact with them. Sure, not everybody's gonna be like this dude who has the nuts to just go out on the street and like talk to people that.
Yeah.
But we gotta have the same perspective.
Absolutely.
I'm not shaken by people who want to be puppies.
No.
I'm not shaken by people who kill babies, although I might kick them in the face, right? But like, I'm not interested in the priests of
it doesn't rattle who you know yourself to be in Christ.
Yes.
And it doesn't undermine in any way the truth of the kingdom of heaven.
The gospel
like,
supersedes everything.
Yeah.
The gospel is more powerful than everything. And I think if we don't believe that, you're gonna flounder off into chaos and stress and anxiety.
Sure.
But if you actually believe that, then you can face all the chaos of the world and be like, you can't do anything to me.
And sometimes, like the Ezra and Nehemiah, to the same sin, and we've used this example before, the response to the same sin, Ezra wept and pulled out his own beard. Nehemiah raged and pulled out the offenders' beards. But that was both of them having a response to the same sin. And it's okay to be an Ezra and it's okay to be a Nehemiah. What it's not okay to do is have a foundation other than the kingdom of heaven, other than Christ.
Yeah, they had the same goal.
Yep.
Same goal, just looked different.
Yeah.
So
good talk.
Yeah, that foundation laid will bleed into every aspect of how we live in this world. The wisdom that we have, the empowerment that we have, how we view believers, how we view non-believers. Like, I don't know if we said it explicitly, but just like, oh yeah, we did these, like in regards to illegal immigration. These are people who need Jesus. In regards to these conversations on the street with people they blatantly disagree with, these people need Jesus. And so having our identity rest in Christ is going to change how we view non-believers, how we view believers in regards to what we talked about earlier of like allowing dissension to come in where there shouldn't be. We need to be united in Christ. And so all understanding and resting in and standing firm in the identity we have in Christ is going to bleed into our mindset and perspective and actions of all of these things. All of these things.
Maybe one more point I thought about just now when you said that. Wanting people to come to the U.S. illegally is not loving them with the love of Jesus either. Because I get that from people too. Like, well, if we're going to be like Jesus, we got to just let people come. Well, that's the same stupid perspective as the pastor who said there's a limit to compassion. It's the same stupid thing. Like you can say I'm for or against it, right? That's not the issue of the gospel. The issue of the gospel is that these people are cared for in a way where they can hear the gospel. But it's not more loving like Jesus to say, just let the people come. That's stupid.
Exactly.
Because I just thought about that. I was like, someone's going to say that. Like, okay, you guys should be in this camper. And I'm going to be like, screw you. It's like,
you have a simpler view for us, Micah?
Yeah, side note real quick. I'm serious. If someone really wants to, as a believer, wants to have that conversation, I'm in. Let's go. Let's go. It will end up is I will force you into a place where you have to acknowledge that the reality of life is about Jesus. And if anything in what you say does not fit in that standard, you will probably not feel very good. Because I've had this conversation with people who are like, well, I want to vote for this person. They're like really, really a fan of abortion, but I like their policies on these other things. I'm like, that's your decision. Obviously, you're free to vote for who you want to vote for, but you kind of have to acknowledge that you're saying this is okay to some degree. I don't know how else you play that, right? I don't know. And it's different than someone saying, like, I think that the abortion decision should be a state's issue, not a federal issue. That's a different conversation than someone saying we should kill babies.
Yes.
Agreed.
If you have a governor like from Minnesota who says you should kill babies up to the third trimester, there's no way around that, right? You just voted for that. I'm saying that to every single one of you idiots who just voted for that. Like, you voted for that. Anyway, so sorry, a little rant.
No, you're good. Do you have a simpler view for us? Don't be stupid.
Yeah. That
would be Micah's.
Can we start a separate podcast?
Don't be stupid.
You guys, you get a little B is I'll just record it by myself. You guys are just gonna text me stuff that you know is gonna like enrage me. Did I ever tell you Cammie set me up one time for that?
No.
The first time we had lunch with the Stanleys after church one day, and she had told Landra Stanley, like, hey, ask Micah about this. Because she knew, like,
that's hilarious.
As soon as she said that, it would like I would just go on this like that's passionate. Hilarious. And so Landra said it, and I started going, and they all started smirking. I was like, what? She was like, I was a total setup. That's great. I think simpler view is like our identity has to rest in Jesus.
Our
identity has to rest in Jesus.
Absolutely.
Let me say it this way. Sorry. If you're going to interact with Rome, your identity has to rest in Jesus. There's a better way to say that. That sucks. But anyway.
Don't be stupid.
Well, if you have a better way to say it, let us know. I really enjoyed this conversation. good. What's crazy is I know it's the title of the podcast, but it's so simple. And it's so much within this.
The title of the podcast is simpler.
Sorry. It's so much simpler than the rest of what we do. I just feel like
change it. We're no longer simpler. We're simple.
We're simple. We should just slowly erase a letter over. We're just S. We're just making it simpler. Okay.
What if it's a piece of it? Like a little bit of the R goes away every time.
Right. Eventually, we would just be simp.
That's true.
So that's
we'll just skip that. We'll do L and P at the same time. So we're just sim. Well, you know who's not a sim. That's Steven. We're in the God Nardio as always. Look at
this new lighting arrangement.
Cleaned up the studio, rearranged the lighting. So let us know in the comments how you feel about it. Give Steven some love down there. He is awesome. He pours his time and effort into this podcast to make it look great and sound great for you guys. So show him some love. And wherever, or tag down below, you're going to see our social media sites. You're going to see websites. You're going to see links to Simpler Bible, to Micah's pages as well. So go check all those things out. Go see where you can get involved. Catch up on Simpler Bible. Go check out our social media pages. Go see what Micah's doing on the road with Eagle's Wings. So yeah, lots of ways to get connected with our individual lives throughout the ministries that we plugged into. There's links down to the 456 as well. Catch up on sermon series. We love that we have the ability to connect with you guys, not only in person, the community and the friendships that we have, but also here online through all of these resources as well. You guys are awesome. We love the Simpler community. And hey, as always, keep Christ as core. What could be simpler than that? We'll catch y'all next week. Bye.